हाय इन्वेस्टर्स, वेलकम टू एसओआईसी। तो इस वीडियो के अंदर हम ये सीखेंगे फ्रॉम मिस्टर जीवन पतवा कि एक्चुअली में फार्मा एंड केमिकल सेक्टर्स का एनालिसिस कैसा करना चाहिए, बिकॉज ही इज वन ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री प्रैक्टिशनर्स एंड ही इज ऑल्सो द सीआईओ एट कैंडी फ्लॉस इन्वेस्टर्स। एंड साथ साथ ही इज बीन managing a lot of family offices for almost a decade, and I have actually personally seen कि इनका बहुत ज़्यादा concentrated investing style है, and इतने concentrated investing style में भी pharma and chemical sectors में how he has found multiple wealth creators। तो इस वीडियो के अंदर पूरी आप सिर्फ यही ध्यान रखना कि एक्चुअली में इनका प्रोसेस क्या है, क्राइटेरिया क्या है, एंड इस पूरे सेक्टर के फिल्टर कैसे करते हैं। एंड टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ द वीडियो में मैंने 10 to 11 क्वेश्चंस भी पूछे हैं सर से, जिन क्वेश्चंस का आंसर फॉर ऑल द बिगिनर्स इज इनवैल्यूएबल।
So, good evening, everybody. So today we are going to talk about how to pick multi-baggers in pharma and chemicals. I have already spoken about the multi-bagger framework. So right now I'm going to speak specifically for pharma and chemicals. The first thing that you need to understand is whenever you want to find multi-baggers, you need to catch the structural theme early. What do you mean by the structural theme? The structural themes are basically the theme which go for a very long period. So it is basically a 10-year, 15-year, 20 years theme. So even if you are basically a little late into the theme, you will still make money because it's a structural theme. It goes for a very long period. So it's not necessary that you need to catch the theme in very initial year. Even if you are late in the theme, you can make money. So chemical sector is one of such big opportunity, is what I feel. It is standing where IT was standing in 1992, and we'll see the analogy afterwards. We are very small in the global context. Now, and the pharma is nothing but a specialty chemical. So it's basically a part of specialty chemical only because a lot of drugs are basically chemical drugs right now. Obviously, there are biological drugs coming now, but till now it's more of a chemical drug. So now, if I look at the difference between the chemical sector and other sector, or then there's a stark difference is in chemical and pharma, you need more domain expertise. If I compare to say FMCG or banking, so you need to really work hard to understand the business. So it requires a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of time. So with time, your experience, your understanding about the sector also improves. And in this sector, every company is a different story. So it's more of a bottom-up analysis in the chemical sector. So in FMCG or banking, you can apply the same framework for all different companies and you can analyze. But in case of chemical and pharma, every company will have a different growth drivers. Every company will have a different story. So you cannot apply a sector approach to these companies. Another way to play this particular structural theme is to identify the management with the right intent and the execution capabilities. So they will spot right opportunities and they will make it big for you. So just look at, so as I said, the chemical is basically standing where IT was standing in 1992. So if you look at IT industry, Indian IT started as a supplying human resources to the world. So cost arbitrage was the main driving factor behind the growth of the IT industry. So initially it started as a pure vanilla services to the global customers. And then after it moved from services to providing solutions, consulting, then product designing, then architecture building. So basically the IT sector moved from very basic services to value-added services. So it moved up the value chain. And there are multiple more large opportunities which are lying ahead in the future, which are like digital, cloud, analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, blockchain. So these are large opportunities which are lying ahead today for IT industry. If you look at IT export in 2000, it was just $4 billion as compared to $470 billion GDP that time. So it was hardly 1% in 2000. In 2021, it is almost 170 to 190 billion, and as compared to the GDP of $2.6 trillion. So it's almost 8% or 9%. So IT export has actually grown from 4 billion to almost 170, 190 billion, so almost 40 to 50 times in last 20 years. I think the similar thing is going to happen in the chemicals. In chemicals, if you look at say last 8 or 10 years, we were basically into building blocks and the commodity chemicals. Slowly we moved up the value chain. So we started getting into specialty chemical, increased focus on the R&D part, long-term relations with the MNCs. So we are working with a lot of MNCs for a very long duration. Now, whenever you work on a specialty chemical, you need to develop different products which are very specific to particular application or particular client. So it takes a lot of time. So it requires a long cycle of R&D, then validations. So once you develop the relation with the MNC, then the contract runs for a very long period. So I think development and validation time has already happened. There are a lot of companies which are now getting into long-term contracts. So we are at the inflection point. From here on, we will grow both in volume and value terms. As we will move up the value chain, our margin will also improve and our return ratios will also improve. So there are two key trends that we need to understand in the chemical industry. One is obviously the import substitution. So right now, if you actually see, India imports almost $56 billion of chemicals, and second is export of specialty chemicals. So one is obviously import substitution. So almost $56 billion of import can be replaced by some of the companies in India. Second is obviously the total global chemical market, which is $4 trillion. Our industry is only $178 billion, which is just 4% of the total global chemical industry. So I think chemical industry in next 10 years or 15 years is going to be really, really big. So right now, if you look at IT, there are a lot of companies which are 2 lakh crore market cap, 4 lakh crore market cap, 10 lakh crore market cap. In next 10 years, I think there will be many chemical companies which will have more than 1 lakh crore, 2 lakh crore, and 5 lakh crore market cap. So there will be new TCS and new Infosys coming out of chemical and pharma. If you look at the chemicals in our daily life, there is a lot of the use of chemical is actually increasing, right from a personal care, home care, crop care, healthcare to industrial application. Everything we see around us uses chemical, be it soap, shampoo, talcum powder, paste, plastic, rubber, fiber, paint, everything, whatever you name it. So chemical has application everywhere. So I think the next big story is going to be chemical. Next Infosys, next TCS is going to come out of the chemicals. There will be many more companies in the chemical having market cap which is more than 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakh crore. So I'm just giving some more data here. Just looking at the specialty chemical industry. So if you look at 2015 to 2019, the CAGR was 12% for specialty chemicals. For next 6 years, the report, basically this is a FICCI report, they predict the growth rate to be more than 12%. I think the growth rate will be even more than 12% because just looking at the contract that companies are getting in last 1 year, the China plus one is also making a lot of driving a lot of growth for the specialty chemical industry. So I think growth rate is not going to be 12%. It will be definitely much more than 12% in the future to come. If you look at the specialty chemical industry by segment, obviously agrochemicals, dyes and pigment makes up almost 50% of the industry. Rest 50% is made up by functional ingredients, surfactant, textile, polymer, etc. If you look at the trade balances in India, then we are basically surplus in building blocks like benzene and paraxylene, whereas we are in short in intermediaries and bulk chemicals like phenol, styrene, acetic acid, and polyol. So we basically import this from China and then we basically convert into specialty chemical and we export. In the future, what's going to happen is there will be many more plants in the intermediates and bulk chemicals. So India will actually become self-sufficient in these chemicals, and there will be more export of the specialty chemicals. Now, this is I have taken from the same FICCI report. So it has been given segment wise. So if you actually see different segments, then I feel F&F, which is flavor and fragrance plus nutraceutical segment, I think they will have the highest growth in the coming years. They have highest entry barriers. There is highest level of product specialization, and end market growth potential is also highest here. Same is the case with the personal care. So I think these are the two sectors where I think there has to be more focus and to find the multi-baggers. So I have divided the industry application wise. So I have just divided into dyes and pigment, rubber chemicals, textile, construction, surfactants, food, flavor and fragrance, agrochemicals, and polymers. And there are different players which is given in the industry. So if you actually look at this in application wise breakup of the industry, Then I think agro, as I said, agro and dyes and pigments, these two are the largest segment. Whereas if you look at the flavors and so if you look at from attractiveness, then flavors and fragrance, food chemicals, uh, water chemicals. So these are some of the attractive segments. I'll just give some details on the agrochemicals because this is the largest sector within the specialty chemicals. So if you look at the value chain in the agrochemicals, so there are companies which actually does R&D to develop different molecules. Then there are technicals, there are players which work in the technical. So this technical is nothing but something similar to API in pharma. So they basically work with global players to develop the molecules and they supply. So they get into long-term contracts or they get into contract manufacturing for large players. Then there's a formulation and then there's a marketing. So players who are in the formulation side, they will also have their marketing arm. So Dhanuka, Sharda Crop Care, they are the players which are into formulation and they also have the marketing arm. Whereas in the technicals, I feel the most attractive in this value chain is the technicals, because in the technical, these players can actually get into the long-term contracts with the large global MNC players, and the contracts run for 10 years, 15 years. The contract value is also large in agrochemicals. So I think this is what I feel is the attractive part in the value chain. Second is dyes and pigment. This industry is actually a highly polluted industry. So if you look at dyes, there are multiple players in the dyes: Bodal, Bulgaria, Akshar came, and Kiri dyes. Food color is a part of dyes only. So dynamic with this specialty, they basically make food color, but that's a part of sub-segment of dyes. In case of dyes, the industry is very polluted industry. Secondly, there are no entry barriers because the capex required is very small. There's a lot of Chinese competition in the sector. There's no specialization in the dyes. So I will definitely stay away from dyes. In case of pigments, again, in pigments, high performance pigment is one of the area where I think there are opportunities. So Sudarshan Chemical works in high performance pigments. So these are something which protects from ultraviolet rays, which protect from sunlight. So these are high performance pigments. I think there is opportunity in high performance pigments. Apart from that, mostly pigments are used in inks, paints and coatings. In flavors and fragrance, if I look at again the value chain, I think the players which make ingredients, they are something similar to, I would say, your API or technicals in agrochemicals. So these players basically they are basically the candidates for long-term contracts. So these players basically can have long-term contracts from large global MNCs. Whereas if you look at the margin, the blenders typically make more margins in this case because they are close to the end users. So blenders actually make more margins, but ingredients have more visibility in terms of the revenue. So Privi, Oriental, Fairchem, these are some of the players in the ingredient value chain. I think Ishmohit has already given the presentation on Privi and Oriental. Now, this is what is most important from my point of view. So I don't look at the chemical industry from application point of view. I look at from chemistry point of view. So I typically divide the chemical industry according to the molecule or the chemistry that the company works. So there are different chemistry like benzene chemistry, there is a fluorination, there is a phosgenation, there is bromine and lithium. Then there are certain molecules like phenol or amines or diketene molecule or ATBS. So I'll typically try to focus on the companies which are specialized in certain chemistry or certain molecules. The reason being, if you are focusing on particular chemistry or particular molecule, the application of that particular chemistry or molecule is wide. So say for RT industry works in benzene chemistry, they have very strong expertise in the benzene chemistry. They are completely forward backward integrated in the benzene chemistry, and they supply to different application including dyes, pigments. They supply to pharma, they supply to personal care. What happens when you are basically specialized in a particular chemistry? What happens is you are backward forward integrated. Secondly, your cost of production will be lesser. You can do a lot of process innovation there. You can optimize the processes, so you are actually become a cost leader. and they will have multiple applications, multiple sectors to supply to. So this is one of the reasons why I like to invest according to the chemistry and the molecules. So you can choose so you can actually need to study about different chemistry, which chemistry actually offers better opportunities. So just to give some pointers, fluorination is the most cleaner chemistry. So a lot of applications are actually moving to fluorination now, and the opportunity size of fluorination is also pretty large. Phogenation is again another cleaner chemistry. Multiple opportunities are there in the phogenation. Neogen is working on multiple long-term contracts in bromine in bromination. Deepak Nitrate has actually developed a platform for phenol and acetone, and there are multiple applications which actually there are multiple downstream applications of phenol and acetone. Like there are a lot of solvents that can be made out of phenol and acetone. You can go for PAP, you can go for you can go for aspirin kind of drugs, you can go for polycarbonate chain, you can go for bisphenol. So there are multiple downstream applications of phenol and acetone. If you look at Tattva Chintan, they have a very specific, again, a cleaner and greener chemistry. So they make phase transfer agents and they make structural directing agents. So that's a very green chemistry. So again, so right now, a lot of people are actually moving towards cleaner and greener chemistry. So I think that's where Tattva Chintan and Clean Science has some age. So Clean Science also works in the catalyst. So what is catalyst? Basically, they basically help to reduce the byproducts. So there are very few byproducts. It's very much a targeted catalyst. So the yield is very high. The energy requirements is lower. So obviously your margins are much higher. So these are few chemistries where I think one can get into more details. Now coming to the pharma industry. So I divide Indian pharma industry into three categories. One is export, another is domestic, and third is API and CRAMS. On the export side, I think there is a lot of competition in the US market. So there is a lot of competition in the generics, and we have seen that in last 5 or 6 years. So I typically won't prefer getting into the export place. Obviously, Sun Pharma is now getting into more specialty pharma. So there are few molecules they are working on. Gland has got some good capabilities in the injectables. I don't like typically Biocon, even if it is in biological drugs, but it's more of a biosimilar drug. So if you actually look at what is biosimilar, then it's nothing but a generic biologic drug. So, but it's a similar biological drug. So it's not exactly same. So in case of chemical, it's exactly same copy, whereas in biosimilar is not the exact copy. So for biosimilar, gaining market share is very difficult. So that's where basically I don't prefer Biocon. So Gland is, I think, maybe a good opportunity because they have got a proven capabilities in the injectable space. Sun Pharma is getting into more specialty kind of portfolio. Domestic pharma, there it's actually something similar to the FMCG place, but in case of domestic, the growth is very limited. So I don't typically prefer domestic pharma. What I like in Indian pharma is I typically go for CRAMS or the CDMO place, something similar, something like Divi's Lab or Syngene or Suven Pharma, Laurus Labs. We need to see how Dishman or Newland or Heikel actually performs in the CDMO side. But yet this has not been proven. So I will stick to maybe Divi's, Syngene, Suven and Laurus. I myself own Suven Pharma and Laurus Lab only. So that's the disclosure I'm giving. So in CDMO part, obviously, when I say CDMO, it's basically for the innovator molecule. So Divi's has got almost 50% from CDMO, 50% from generic. So it's not 100% CDMO. Syngene is till now it's more of a CRO, clinical research organization. Now they are getting into the manufacturing. Suven is 100% CDMO. Laurus has got a CDMO vertical. So if you ask me which are the opportunities in the Indian pharma sector, I think one is CDMO or CRAMS. Second is complex APIs. So something which Natco Pharma works. So they are complex molecules that they work on. Next is 505B2 opportunities. So these are the molecules which are repackaged molecules with different delivery mechanism or for different indications the existing molecule is used. They have got again a 5 years patent expiry period. So I think that's another good opportunity, lower risk, but better rewards. And then there is a para for opportunities. So typically para for opportunities are very large molecule opportunities. So there is good cash flow a company can earn. So NATCO is more into para for opportunities. So these are the few opportunities that I like in the Indian pharma sector. Now coming to finding the multi-baggers in the chemical and pharma, this is the investment framework that I use. So there are 4 parameters that one needs to look at. One is obviously safety and compliance, which is the most important factor that one needs to look at. So if I am looking at the chemical sector, then I will look at if there are any plant accidents in the past. Is there any pollution control board notice given to the company anytime in the history? Responsible care is this responsible care logo is one of the good measure to understand the safety and compliance of particular chemical company. So if the company has a responsible care logo, there is some threshold of compliance that company is doing. You need to look at whether the plants are zero discharge plants. You need to, so in case of pharma, obviously you need to go for US FDA audit track record, whether there was any warning letters, whether there's any import alert which the company has received in past. So I think safety and compliance is the most important parameter in the investment framework. Second is obviously the product portfolio. So you need to look at the leadership in the product that they are making, innovation that they are doing. So there can be a product innovation, there can be a process innovation. The differentiation that they are bringing, the diversification of the product portfolio that they have, and which are the end user industries. So for chemical, obviously, as I said, personal care industry is a growing industry. Agrochemical has got large contracts. Pharma will have obviously again better margins. So you need to look at which end user industries they cater to. The next 2 parameters are again the most differentiating and most important parameters. One is execution capability and next is the ability to scale. So there is a difference between execution capability and ability to scale. So PI industry, RT industries, SRF, Deepak nitrate, in chemical sector, and in pharma sector, Divi's, Laurus and Gland, they have got an excellent execution capability. So they are able to execute large projects within time and better returns. When I say ability to scale, it's about how capable you are to scale up your existing product portfolio. So you get into one product and how well you can scale up that particular product. So when it comes to ability to scale, I think Deepak Nitrate has demonstrated very well. Aarti Vinati has demonstrated very well. Laurus Syngene has also demonstrated well in the pharma side. We need to look at whether Heikel and Newland can do that, the ability to scale. So these are the 4 parameters that basically makes up the investment framework. Now I just try to give 2 examples which actually fits into this investment framework. So these are 2 my favorite stocks. I own both the stocks. One is Laurus Labs, second is Deepak Nitrate. So when I talk about these 2 companies, what comes to mind is execution, innovation, and ability to scale. So if I look at execution, Laurus Lab has done 2,000 crore capex over last 5 years. Similar capex, so 2,000 crore they are going to spend in next 3 years, and thereafter the free cash flow from operations will be almost 2,000 crores every year from FY25. Similar is the case with Deepak Nitrate. So they are also spent almost 1,800 crore capex in last 5 years. They will be doing similar over next 3 years, and thereafter they will be generating similar kind of free cash flow every year from FY25 onwards. So both the companies are going to generate almost 10,000 crore free cash flow over next 5 years, starting from FY25. And there are multiple opportunities exist for reinvesting that cash flow at an attractive ROC, return on capital. If I look at their execution track record, their 5 years sales CAGR was 22% in case of Laurus. 5 years PAT CAGR was 49% as against Divi's sales CAGR of 13% and PAT CAGR of 12%. FY21, Laurus has got ROC of 40%, Divi's got ROC of 32%. In case of Deepak Nitrate, sales CAGR of 26%, PAT CAGR 65%, If I compare it with say Aarti, Atul or PI, you can see the difference. Same is the case in case of ROC. So Deepak generate much higher ROC than Aarti, Atul and PI Industries. So this is about execution. When it comes to innovation, Laurus is able to innovate the process so that is reflected in their margins and the return ratios. So they are basically selected few molecules and they try to become the cost leaders in these particular molecules. So be it efavirenz or dolutegravir or tenofovir, these are few molecules where they have been the cost leaders due to the process innovation. They have also done some technology innovation in the formulation side, like they are using monolayer instead of bilayer, leading to 3. So this basically increases their speed by 3 times. They are world leaders in in 8 products, and they are aspiring to have the world leadership in 15 products. This world leadership has come because of the process innovation and the cost leadership. When it comes to Deepak Nitrite, because of forward and backward integration, they are able to get the cost leadership in multiple products like nitrotoluenes, para-nitrotoluenes. Then they make DASDA out of that, and then they make optical brightening agents. So because of this forward and backward integration, they are the leaders in the optical brightening agents and DASDA. They also got best supplier award for Syngenta and Bayer. They are supplying to Lonza since many years, which tells about the quality of the product. They are making pharma grade acetone. So when they put up the plant of phenol and acetone, the main concern was how they are going to sell the acetone in the market of such a huge quantity. But since they are able to make very high quality acetone, they are able to sell the acetone to the pharma companies. Third is the ability to scale. Now this is something which you need to understand. So when I say ability to scale, Laurus is able to scale each of its vertical to a very meaningful size. So if I look at their ARV vertical, so antiretroviral APIs or antiretroviral formulation, so they are able to scale it up to 3,500 crores in last 10 years. If I look at the formulation, in 2018 the formulation revenue was 0. In 2021 the revenue for formulation was 2,000 crores. So in 3 years they are able to scale up to 2,000 crores. CDMO, they are able to scale up to 700 crores in last 6 years, and in next 3 years I expect it to be 1,500 crores. In biologics, they have recently acquired Richcore Lab 1.5 years back, and they are aiming to make it 750 crores in next 3 years. This is my estimate based on the capacity that they are going to put up. So when they acquired Richcore, the capacity was 20,000 liters. They are now aiming to make it 2 million liters. If you look at their non-ARV business, so I'm including API and formulation, I estimate that non-ARV business itself will be 5,000 crores in next 5 years. So this is what the ability to scale up. Similarly, in case of Deepak Nitrite put up a plant of phenol last 3 years back, and now they are almost next year they will be, so next 2 years they will be generating almost $1 billion revenue from the phenol. Phenol and acetone is actually, so I basically call phenol and acetone as a key to the treasure, because there are multiple opportunities which are lying ahead. There are multiple downstream products that they can actually manufacture. This phenol and acetone plant has actually created very strong entry barriers for any new player to come in these downstream products. So if you look at the customers of Deepak Nitrite or Deepak Phenol, the Vinati, Camlin, Galaxy, Valiant, Clean Science, everyone basically buys phenol from Deepak Nitrite. So that basically gives you an idea about what are the downstream opportunities which are available for the Deepak Nitrite in the future. That's it. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Jeevan sir. Just before we are at the end, so I have just 4 to 5 questions that I think we can answer for all the viewers.
Sure.
So just in terms of regulatory framework, which sector do you think is better, the chemical sector or the pharma sector?
Yes, so from regulatory perspective, I think chemical definitely is better than pharma, because pharma has got multiple. So you need to understand multiple regulatory thing in terms of pharma. So obviously, one is US FDA plant. So you need to have a plant which will clear the US FDA audit. Secondly, you need to also understand the competition which is coming in the pharma. So in generics, whenever you are launching any molecule on particular date, there may be more than 3, 4, sometimes it may be 15 players which are coming in the same day. So it's very difficult to model how much revenue they can actually make from particular molecule. So in case of generics, it's very difficult to model how much cash flow or how much profit they will make. So if you just look at the example of Lupin, right? Just look at what has happened in last 3 years, last 4 years. A lot of their plants were actually been not able to export to US because of the US FDA problems. So they're not able to generate that kind of top line or bottom line in last 3 to 4 years, and this is because of the regulatory problems. Similar is the case with the Sun Pharma. Their Halol plant is not yet cleared in last 3 years. So chemical sector looks much better when it comes to the regulatory part.
Right, right. And one more question that arises. So I've seen you over the years pick the likes of Deepak Nitrite. I think you've been owning for last 4 or 5 years. You were invested in Suven for almost a decade. And even in Laurus, you were there since the con calls of 2017, 2018 when it IPO.
Right.
So how important will you classify scalability as a mental model to actually generate disproportionate returns by partnering with the right set of entrepreneurs? How important is the concept of scalability?
So I think scalability is important for all the sectors. So for all the companies, scalability is one of the main parameters that we look at when we invest. If the business is not scalable, obviously you are not going to get the returns. At certain level, you are going to stuck. So I would say scalability is nothing but the longevity of the business. If the business has the scalability, then there will be more longevity, and obviously the multiple will be higher there. If the business doesn't have scalability, the multiple cannot expand, right?
Right. Because we've seen businesses like Castrol, which have scaled to a certain extent,
Yes,
and
yes.
60-70%, but you cannot scale.
Correct. So business has to be scalable when we invest. So I think chemical sector, if I look at today, I think 10 years, 15 years, it's going to be a very, very massive opportunity. So it's a highly scalable business. It has got a massive, massive opportunity.
Right, right. One more question linked to this concept is that suppose if Indian regulators get as stringent as Chinese regulators when it comes to dealing with pollution in the chemical sector, so do you think that will be an antithesis for the entire sector, or there are select few players whose compliance quality is still world class?
Yes, so there are very few players, I should say. There are very few players, Indian players, which has got a very world class plants or world class capacity. But if government has to implement something similar to what China is implementing, then I think a lot of companies will face problems. There will be a lot of companies which will face problems. So there are only few players. So that's where I said, so responsible care logo is one of the parameter you can actually use to see if the company has got that kind of capability or capacity. Because when someone goes for responsible care logo audit, there are many things that it has to satisfy. Then only it gets that logo. And just to mention, Deepak Nitrite was one of the first company, I should say, one of the very first company to get the responsible care logo. So they got, I think, some 8 years back. So that time nobody was even talking about all this.
Right. Right. And since we, like in last couple of months, we've been through a period of market correction or sometime like time-wise correction. So how would you, since you've been investing for almost a decade now, more than a decade, I would say 13, 14 years.
Right.
So what will you advise to the new investors or the young investors, how to deal with the concept of volatility?
Correct. So what has happened in last 6 months or 8 months is there was an euphoria in the chemical sector. So what has happened is valuations actually run ahead of time. So a lot of companies were started trading at 70, 80, 90 P multiple. I think that's where basically there was a correction. So I think so even if the company is growing at 25-30%, I think valuation P multiple 80, 90 is definitely not reasonable.
Right.
These multiples are definitely not reasonable. So I typically will go for companies which are trading at a reasonable valuation.
Right. Right.
So I think that's a way. So margin of safety has to be there when you invest. So that kind of valuation doesn't provide any margin of safety. So it's better to avoid these kind of multiples.
Fully agreed. And one more question linked to this is actually if a youngster or if a beginner is looking at the chemical or the pharma sector today, so what will you suggest him? Like, what should be the starting point to learn these sectors?
Best starting point will be to listen to the conference call as Ishmoit does. So you can actually listen to the conference call. You can go through the annual reports and investor presentations. See, as I said, chemical and pharma is the most toughest sector to actually analyze. You need to have a lot of domain knowledge. So you need to build that domain knowledge over the years. So it takes time. It takes time to develop and build the domain expertise in this particular sector. So it definitely takes 2 years or 3 years to just build the understanding of the sector. You need to talk to the people in the sector. You need to talk to the industry people. But to start with, I think conference call and the presentation will be the good starting point.
Right. And also you can watch SOIC videos.
Yes, correct. Yes.
So just one or two questions more from my side. So like we've seen chemical sector, we have seen pharma sector. So pharma sector is not homogeneous. It is very, very heterogeneous.
Yes.
So which pools of the value chain you will think the real profitability lies, or it is very bottoms up type in this sector?
It's completely bottom up. But as I said, if you ask me what are the opportunities in the Indian pharma sector, I'll go for the CDMO opportunities.
Right.
Because they have got a very long-term visibility with the margins margin safety, so they can protect their margins even in the downturn. I will go for companies which are working on 505(b)(2) opportunities, like Sun Pharma is working on some opportunities, Suven Pharma is working on certain opportunities, because there you get almost 5-year patent period, where you can actually make good cash flows. Third is para 4 opportunity companies which are working on para 4 opportunities, because these are typically very large molecules in para 4 opportunities. So they give good cash flow visibility for the company. And then there are complex APIs. So people who actually work in complex APIs, so not too many competition can actually come in those APIs. So I think these are the opportunities one should be looking at in pharma.
Right. Because like it becomes a little challenging looking at it.
Yes.
Because there are so many segments, so many companies.
Yes, there are more than 100 companies or maybe 200 companies actually listed in the pharma side. But if you actually see, majority of them are actually generic pharma companies, or they are more. So I think we should be avoiding generic pharma companies, because you never know how the competition will hit you.
Right.
And we have seen that in last 5 years. So biggies like Sun Pharma, DRL, Cipla, Scadila, Glenmark, everybody has faced that hit in last 5 years. So I think it's always go for specialty pharma, go for CDMO kind of players. I think that's where basically you can make good money.
Just one last question from my side. So when it comes to picking these companies which are early in their journey, so I think like you picked like Suven Pharma, or you invested in a Deepak right at a MCAP of 3,000-4,000 crores, or you got into a Laurus at a very small MCAP. So how important is the beginning market cap, and how important is the size of the base in these opportunities?
So some people basically say that if the company has a very long visibility, then it actually doesn't matter. But in my view, base always matters. So I always try to pick companies when they are very small. So I typically go by the management. So if the as I said, so if you find the right management, then you actually don't need to dig very deep. Then you can actually take a bet on the management, and management will spot the opportunities for you, and they will make it big for you. So I think this is the easiest way of getting into this kind of sector, where there's a lot of technical expertise required, right? So base is always important. So I think base will differ. So if you want to go for a multi-bagger, obviously base is what is important. If you invest at a smaller base, then you can make multi-bagger. Otherwise, it becomes like a compounder then.
Right. And how important is like getting partnering with technocrats in this industry?
From investing point of view, you're asking?
Yeah, right. So if we talk about Laurus, so Dr. Satya is a technocrat, and again, if we talk about Suven, so again.
So obviously, if so, that's one of the way to filter the management. So if the management is technocrat, obviously, I think I would prefer technocrats. So if you look at Dr. Chava, if you look at So the passion of these people is basically the sector. So their passion lies in the business. So that's where basically I go for.
Right. Thank you so much for answering all the questions very
Thanks
quickly.
a lot.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Ishmohit, for hosting this. Thanks everyone.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.